Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, wow, that's a big one. I think spring has arrived with all its energy. Well, animals running around. By that I mean us. With all our kindred coming to life. Very wonderful. So, yeah, nice to be with you. Glad you're here. All you folks joining online as well. I'm going to talk today a little bit about the harmony and difference of sameness. In particular, the text whose name is translated Harmony of Difference and Sameness, which is, one of the, generally considered one of the basic texts of the Soto Zen tradition. So it would be often included in the daily practice would be chanting these texts. And when I came here, we chanted this text on a regular basis, so it's kind of in my bones. And the Japanese name is Sandokai. Chinese name is something like Canton-chi. I don't pronounce Chinese well, so my apologies. Anyway, this is an old piece of literature, about 8th century, written by Shitou Xiqian, who also wrote a poem called The Song of the Grass of Hermitage, which was the subject of my first book. And but this text, The Harmony of Difference and Sameness, is much more influential and well-known than The Song of the Grass of Hermitage. This is a text largely about the relationship between the apparent world of distinct things that we think we live in and the utter mystery of what is actually here. And we say difference and sameness because since everything in a more ultimate sense is utterly mysterious, it's all the same in that regard. We're all bound together in the mystery of how this moment happens to appear this way to each of us in our utterly distinct ways. This text was written 8th century as a time of great flourishing of the Chan, or what came to be known as the Zen tradition in China. And also don't know exactly the dates, and to tell the truth, we don't really know if Shitou even wrote this thing because the historical record we have from this era is a little bit murky. But whether he wrote it or not, certainly the culture that produced Shitou and Chan produced this text. And so it has something about that time in it. And you won't probably notice this, or unless I told you, you would be doubtful that this is true, but in the 8th century was, in China, probably the most catastrophic violent war in human history, according to most historians. So the Anlushan rebellion, there's a lot of, there's some people who claim that 5% of the human population died in China, which was 30% of the Chinese population. Most scholars at this point are debating, will say that's probably inaccurate, but it was an enormous eruption of violence, starvation, mass displacement, just utterly, unimaginably terrible to live through. When you listen to the poem, you will not have any idea that that is true. And, I bring it up just because I think it's not hard when you read a lot of Buddhist literature. It's just kind of wonderful, peaceful, and you're like, oh, well, that's good for you, but it's terrible now. I'm not sure. I think there have been a lot of difficulties for a lot of people for as long as there have been people, and it all matters. And the claim of this tradition is that these responses that we're putting forth are ones that are beneficial and can help people be free from suffering. just for the, I know there's always a couple nerds in here like me. The title, Canton King, is the same as a second century, the title of a second century Taoist text on alchemy. Whoa. So if you want to like do any Taoist alchemy, you can go refer to that one. I don't know really anything beyond that, but a lot of the language of Chinese Buddhism is closely related to the language of Taoism. So the main theme of the text, I'm going to just talk about it from one angle. One of the main themes are images that you hear in the text are darkness and light. Darkness and light. And these can be thought of in a lot of different ways, so I'm just going to talk about them in one way. So the light that we're talking about here is kind of like the world as it appears to us as a set of distinct things. So like right now, because there's light, I look around and I'm like, oh, I see all these particular faces. I see individual people that I know, that I understand different things about their life stories. And I'm like, oh, and there's windows and there's stuff outside. So I'm seeing, because there's light and it seems light, there's all this distinctness and what we would think of normally as clarity. So things are distinguished, they're separate, they have particular characteristics. This is called in this text, in the Chinese and in many other texts, Shi, which I'm pronouncing wrong. Oh well. So, sorry. Shi. So Shi is this light, clear, distinguished phenomena. She doesn't mean light, by the way. She means something like things and affairs. In this translation, sometimes we see it translated as phenomena. And everyone in the Huayan class is getting a big dose of all the relationships between phenomena, she, things, affairs. But no matter what, it has something to do with like the immediate, momentary, distinct features of experience. So that's like where we live. Like, basically for most human beings, the only thing we have any awareness of is she. It seems like the world is made up of a bunch of stuff. And the dark is mysterious, empty. At one point in the text, the word for dark is yin, which you might recognize from the terms yin and yang, the feminine principle. Empty, void, pregnant, capacity, possibility, limitlessness, unknowability, ungraspability. And the claim is that these are always here. And if we use the basic Buddhist philosophical frame, that's called Li. So we have Shi is the distinct things, Li is the darkness, the unknowable, mysterious, empty quality. So in Buddhist thinking, in Mahayana Buddhist thinking, the idea is for something to appear as Li, as distinct, it has to be empty of all the characteristics that make it appear that way. That's kind of the basic idea. And that's why everyone is sad that they got into Mahayana Buddhism. Spend your whole life trying to figure out what that means. I used to be really annoyed with this obsession in Mahayana Buddhism, especially early Chinese Chan, on the relationship between Li and Shi. I just thought, that seems good. I've come to really see a lot of value in it, and a lot of value in trying to help people understand why it seems so important to the people who form this religious movement. So, there's so many different ways of talking about this, but I'll just say it this way, like all the characteristics that you think something has are imputed by your mind, and they're not absolute truths. And we can find different ways to do that, but to sort of make an argument for that. But for now, I'll just say, what if we just kind of say, well, that might be possible. that if I think something has a distinct characteristic, it's never the absolute truth. And the absolute truth is, we do claim an absolute truth in this tradition. The absolute truth is that the thing you think has absolute truth does not. That's it. It's really simple. The non-absoluteness of anything you think is an absolute truth. That's the absolute truth. That's like, I'm almost just quoting, Yogacara, Madhyamaka philosophy. So anyway, the darkness is that aspect of things, that the things that you impute on things are not absolutely true. And so it's not like there's one or the other, or they oppose each other. They absolutely must be dependent on each other, because something can't be absent of the absolute truths you impute on it without having those absolute truths, right? So you can't just be like, emptiness doesn't apply to things that are not experienced. That'd be one way to put it. So we're talking about these things are like seamlessly, intimately related. That things seem clear, distinct, and manifest, and that ultimately all the qualities that make them seem distinct and manifest are not absolute truths. And this is really simply and explicitly medicine for grasping. That's why. So it may sound like, why did we get here? We got here because people suffer because they grasp at things that they can't hold on to. And we can start to see a world that's not made of things that we can grasp and hold on to. And then we can be free. That's the claim. So, I had a very affirming experience of the value of the light of Shi, and really taking in Shi not as phenomena, as it is sometimes translated, but as looking at a more sort of old or less technically Buddhist definition of the term, which is things and affairs. A lot of interest as Buddhism came into China in importing it into the indigenous systems there, Taoism and Confucianism, both of which are really deeply about relationship, and Confucianism in particular about relationships that are clear, that are held in a healthy ritual framework. So on Friday, I went to court. It's like when you're telling a story, it's like I read a book on how to engage people in your talk. Create a mystery. Anyway, so I was at federal court in St. Paul, so the Evangelical Lutheran Church of America and the United Church of Christ and a single Catholic priest brought suit against the federal government. And I was at what's called an amici in that suit, which means I contributed a friend of the court brief to the court in their consideration of the suit. So these religious bodies, with some amici, including me, were suing the federal government to allow access to the Whipple building for clergy to provide pastoral care and ministry to people who are detained at the Whipple building, which, if you don't know, is where sometimes known as ICE jail. So I went to court. So we asked a lot of people to show up at the court and pack the courtroom wearing all our beautiful religious garments. It was quite wonderful. Little yarmulkes, and it was Eid, so none of our Muslim partners showed up because they're busy celebrating the end of Ramadan. But anyway, we went to the courtroom, and this is why I'm talking about this as Shi. I watched with great appreciation, in a ritualized context, people make extremely clear arguments within a system that is precise and defined for what we were doing. The people representing the ELCA and UCC got up and they made their arguments. The defendant for the federal government made their arguments. The judge listened. They all did their thing. I'm probably happy about it because we prevailed and we got an injunction, and now that we have access, so that's nice. Woo! But I was also just happy about it because I watched the functioning of a social system, which is very complex, done with precision, with a kind of a clarity, in the light of the she, in which I felt some trust. And it's possible that there are people here right now who feel like there are some federal institutions that they cannot trust. I am among them. But just very beautiful to see that and come away feeling like, oh, I'm really grateful that we have this, that all the parties in this, all the attorneys involved, the judges, the stenographers, the clergy who showed up, the communications people who ran the cameras, just so grateful for this organized clarity. Now, I will say, Buddhist texts very explicitly do not say that we should trust institutions because they have existed for a long time. Definitely not. There's this, from the earliest layers of Buddhism, there's lots and lots of challenging of existing institutions and power structures. So I'm not saying like everyone should just like get on board. That's not what the teachings have taught me. But nor do they say we should constantly challenge, oppose, or not trust them. They say we should judge them in terms of whether they are conducive to suffering or non-suffering, because that's the only frame we really get given over and over again within Buddhism for making these kind of distinctions. So anyway, that felt very like, the precision of the arguments, all this technical language, wow. The capacity of human beings to figure things out, amazing and wonderful. So I'm trying to, just frame these in some ways that seem sort of experiential. So Lee, the darkness and the mystery, what can I say? Someone came up to me, or maybe I came up to someone. This way I don't out whether it's me or them. Actually, I don't necessarily remember. Anyway, I have heard in Dokusan before, that is to say, a private conference with a teacher about 5 or 6 days into a session or meditating. We start meditation at about 6 a.m. and wrap up at 9, and the whole day is focused on just resting in awareness without figuring things out. The entire structure of the retreat is designed to make it so we don't have to figure things out. It's like, what am I going to do? I'm going to sit here. The bell rang. What am I going to do? I'm going to stand up. The Doan turned to the right. What am I going to do? I'm going to turn to the right. I didn't have to figure anything out. Hours and hours of not having to figure anything out. Freedom, my friends. Get on board. It's wonderful. Freedom from choice. Of course you have a choice. Of course you have a choice. But what if you give yourself a moment of freedom from choice? The choice is still there. That's okay. Anyway, after several days of this, on more than one occasion, I've heard someone say, I'm not sure time exists. And all the teacher can really say is, yeah. Things that seem so absolutely true, with practice, we can see they are not absolutely true. And they don't have to be replaced with something else. Now I know what time is. Let me explain to you what time is. Well, we'll have a Dharma talk on Uji, and we'll do that. Uji is Dogen's text on time being. So many things that seem so clear can fall away, and you may just come here for morning zazen and leave. And as you're leaving, you just sort of look out at the back garden or the lake. And it's kind of hard to talk about, but it's just not Not like a bunch of stuff to figure out or do something with. It's just here. Just here. Lee, mysterious, empty of the imputations we make. Usually when we move closer to it, usually profoundly peaceful, intimate, spacious, often quiet, but it can be very loud. You know, sound can be there doing all its sound things, but it's maybe not, don't have it to define it as sound. It's just something. And, you know, these can come together sometimes. They're also non-dual, so I do think oftentimes people will describe like they come and they sit for a while, and it's like their mind seems to be dividing things up and trying to figure everything out and churning much less, and there's more of a sense of direct presence with the body and what's heard and seen and smelled. And what they describe is clarity. Clarity. Like at the end of the Metta Sutra when it says having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires. Present. But it's like there is a precision to it. You're actually like there's a new kind of precision. It's like you're just so intimately hearing the sound of that airplane that's passing overhead right now. But with nothing extra. So the clarity of Shi is not ultimately distinct from the merged or empty or spacious mystery of Li. They can be recognized intimacy. So let's, you know what I would like to do now is do some chanting. Would you mind finding the chant books? You could maybe enlist someone to, two or three people is plenty. That's fine. Thank you, folks. And I'm going to pass out some chant books. You don't need to look at the chant books. You can. There's only enough to share, so try and like put one so it's like for two people. Yeah, so in a minute we'll chant the text, Harmony of Difference and Sameness. And
Okay.
hopefully that will be nice. So while our beloved friends who've just leaped up to volunteer are passing out, we'll be sharing, so you can just send about 2 or 3 per row. We'll do the trick. If you're online, whenever we're chanting here during services, which occur 5 mornings a week, during sessions, or during talks like this, you can find the chant book at the website mnzencenter.org. And on that website, if you go to the resources tab, there's a thing that says chants and services. And right at the top of that page, it says download the MZMC chant book. So you don't need to open this up yet because we're not going to start chanting the text yet. So you can just leave that closed because I want to do something else. Oh, look at this. This is when I wish my friend Anna Stamborski was here. She always says, I used to teach middle school. I can get you all online. So anyway, so I would like to begin. Chanting comes from 2 principal things, which is breathing and hearing. So I'd like to start with the breathing and then work on the hearing a little bit. You don't need to, I'll give you the page number later, so you don't need to worry about the text at all. So I'm just going to invite you to find an upright posture similar to that which you would usually use for meditation. This is really one of the aspects of this posture is it provides space for the breath. And just in order to facilitate a really strong concentration on the breath, I'm going to invite you to close your eyes. And we're just going to take really a couple of very long, slow, deep breaths down into the belly. So trying to draw air down towards the navel or even below the navel. So let's inhale. And then slowly release. I'll use a 6 count. So inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. One more down below the navel, drawing air in. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now just you can resume natural breathing without any particular effort. And I just want to take 3 breaths now. And what we're going to do is the inhalation, we're going to get that same amount of air drawing into the body, but with a brisk drawing in, and then we're going to release over the same period of time. So prepare, and we're going to inhale and exhale. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale. Exhale. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. One more. And release. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, you can just let the breathing be at rest. So when we're chanting, we can use this kind of breath where we take brief, very strong breaths down into the abdomen, and then let that air slowly come out. And then whenever we need air, we just take it in. Take it in. So the other aspect is listening, and I thought of a little experiment I want to do today. So the idea is we're chanting on the same pitch, technically in octaves. So the chant leader will give the pitch. So it might be something like harmony of difference and sameness. So there's the pitch. We can sing in octaves, da, da, depending on your gender. You can pick one of those pitches, da, da. So what I want to do now, though, is not chant that pitch. I actually confuse matters by chanting that pitch. What I want to do is I'm going to give a cue, and I want everyone to just come in chanting O and sustain the O. So when you need to breath, just take a breath and then come back with O. But no one is going to give you the pitch. So it's going to be pretty chaotic. And then as soon as you've started and you're like, okay, I'm chanting this, what I want to do is I want to arrive at the pitch that I am chanting with everyone in this room. The likelihood that in the back of the room you will be able to hear what I'm chanting is very small. So we're just going to come in on a note and then try and end up on this note together. Alrighty? We're chanting O. that's pretty cool. You all listened. It was a tiny gap. So that's impressive. This reminds me of when they recorded the first Ornette Coleman album, Free Jazz. He had Charlie Hayden playing on bass. And the point was there's no tonal center, so there's not going to be any chords or harmony. And Charlie Hayden couldn't help but hearing what would make everything that was happening in utter chaos sound like a chord. And so Ornette Coleman had to be like, no, stop doing that. So that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I did not expect that at all. No. All right, so now let's chant the harmony of difference and sameness. It is on page 5.8 in the chant book. And since we're doing this at a Zen Center, why don't I just show you, when using a chant book in a Soto Zen service, we hold it in a particular way, which I'll show here, like this. So if you're sharing, you can just go over here. So you're welcome to practice embodying this in the way we do it. All right. 3 fingers out, pinky and thumbs inside. So I'll chant the title first, and then we'll chant together. Harmony of difference and sameness. The mind of the great sage of India is intimately transmitted from west to east, while human faculties are sharp or dull. The way has no northern or southern ancestors. The spiritual source shines clear in the light. The branching streams flow on in the dark. Grasping at things is surely delusion. According with sameness is still not enlightenment. All the objects of the senses interact and yet do not. Interacting brings involvement, otherwise each keeps its place. In quality and form, sounds differ as pleasing or harsh. Refined and common speech come together in the dark. Clear and murky phrases are distinguished in the light. The 4 elements return to their natures, just as a child turns to its mother. Fire heats, wind moves, water wets, earth is solid. Eye and sight, ears, sounds, nose, smells, tongue and taste. Thus with each and everything, depending on these roots, the leaves spread forth, trunk and branches share the essence, revered and common, each has its speech. In the light there is darkness, but don't take it as darkness. In the dark there is light, but don't see it as light. Light and dark oppose one another like front and back foot in walking. Each of the myriad things has its merit expressed according to function and place. Phenomena exist, box and lifted, principle responds, arrow points meet, hearing the words, understand the meaning, don't set up standards of your own. If you don't understand the way right before you, how will you know the path as you walk? Progress is not a matter of far or near, but if you are confused, mountains and rivers block your way. for this recitation be an offering for the liberation of all beings throughout space and time. Thank you. That was wonderful to hear. And I'll just talk for a few minutes about this still. So a few years ago, I just want to point out, something stood out for me, like grasping at things is surely delusion, according with sameness is still not enlightenment. And yeah, because you might, I don't know, you can get some language in traditions related to Buddhism. It's like, oh, it's all one, and if you realize oneness, then everything's great. And that's not it, to quote Salt and Pepper. So, grasping at things, surely delusion. According with sameness is still not enlightenment. And then it doesn't give you the answer, you know. So I was reminded, I was standing upstairs getting ready to come down here, and I remembered a couple quotations from Audre Lorde that I bring to myself frequently. Audre Lorde being black lesbian poet and essayist who's very closely associated with the womanist movement. Anyway, she said one time or multiple times, "It is out of chaos that new worlds are born." It is out of chaos that new worlds are born. And another one is, differences must not be merely tolerated, but must be seen as a fund of necessary polarities between which our creativity can spark in a dialectic. Dialectic is a big word that I don't even understand, but I still get the gist. So I just, those came to mind because, you know, the world of she and distinct things is about this web of relationships between different things, and how there's part of our liberation is there. That is where our liberation is possible and where we can do things. And then, you know, the mysterious dark is just this chaos. I mean, it's like you cannot possibly figure it all out. And yet, new worlds are being born moment to moment from it. And they're a little bit like similar in some regard, these two phrases, because it's like all that difference can seem chaotic. So it's Mahayana Buddhism is non-dual, and Audre Lorde, as my friend Ayotunde wrote in an amazing essay, got a lot of her inspiration from Taoist texts, which are closely related to the ones we're talking about today. But I just remember it's about 3 or 4 years ago, I got pulled in to be the president of the Soto Zen Buddhist Association on kind of short notice. And what would happen is there was going to be like a new ethics policy, a massively new ethics policy, and the process by which this was presented to the community did not go over well. Didn't go over well. And so, you know, SCBA is like a tiny nonprofit with one half-time staff person that is a member organization of about 250 Soto Zen priests. But anyway, there was a lot of disagreement about how to do the ethics policy. And this is like a big deal because people have been profoundly and horribly impacted by abuse by clergy. So having a good ethics policy is really important. But then people have been so harmed that there's this activation and trauma, and then they're, you know, in all kinds of different ways. So it was like, wow, it was a very hot topic. And I was like, great, sure. I would love to do this. But, you know, I love the folks, and it was cool. But the process, I held these helped me a lot through the process to just be like, yeah, out of chaos, out of this I'm not going to figure this out and somehow make it happen. This is like 250 very opinionated people who are used to having a lot of authority. Good luck, So it's not going to work for me to just be like, I'm going to go in, I'm going to get all the she and the distinct things figured out, and I'm just, it's not going to work. I need to embrace that this is chaotic, that it's mysterious, that it's uncontrollable. That's always true for me, but it was like really evident, and it enabled me to approach a lengthy process with a kind of some trust. And difference must not be merely tolerated. She is about things and affairs, all these different things living in their particular distinct relationships. There's all these people with their own conditioning, their own views. And I think this isn't going to work unless we listen to each other, probably. I even tried listening to people. Yeah, and so we had some processes, and the differences were not merely tolerated, but people did see them as a place where creativity could happen. And after about 9 months, we adopted a new ethics policy, which I think is really good and has helped a lot of people so far. And, other people could disagree about that, and that's okay. Difference must not be merely tolerated. I believe this. So these teachings can seem like, sort of out there, but actually they're, in a lot of ways, this emphasis in Chinese Buddhism is they're trying to make the idea that everything is empty help us see how it is a practical part of how we can engage in liberation together, and how that is about the things of the world, not a withdrawal from the world, but things and affairs, human beings and the things we do with each other. So I found them to be really, really supportive, and I certainly get to see a lot of people doing a lot of amazing things, and I don't think it would hurt if a few more of us had a little bit more sense of the Li, of how mysterious it is. I mean, we're pretty good at thinking we've got it figured out. Some of us. I will say Li isn't about self-doubt. It's not about being paralyzed by feeling like everything's too amorphous. These things live in balance. So, because people are so focused on the she and they live there and they think what they think is true is always absolutely true and that kind of thing, they get stuck. Even if that language doesn't sound right, we just get stuck. And so we have a lot of emphasis here on practices that help us to open to the mystery. And when we can do that, we can be around with people, and even though we may not use any of this language, we may be able to help them be a little closer to it and be a little real with it. And then there's space for something more beautiful to emerge together. All right, well, thanks for listening. And now I have time for other voices. So I welcome other voices, questions, brief reflections, and spoken in an audible voice from anyone. Go ahead.
I'm Joe. Thank you for your talk. I have a quote, and I attribute it in my head to Audre Lorde, but I don't know, actually. I'm thinking, maybe it was Helen Keller. But I'm like, no, I think it was Audre Lorde, but it is, I cannot do everything, but still I can do something. And I will not refuse to do the something I can do. And I'm so glad that you shared about your experience at federal court on Friday. I'm an attorney.
I know.
And, I'm going to get emotional. it has been such a hard several months. And I have had the opportunity to practice in an area I'm not familiar with or comfortable in, and that is doing pro bono habeas work. And I have seen just like beauty out of the chaos, and people come together in a way that it's kind of perverse. Only through such pain, you know, does the beauty arise. And I also see it, you know, talk about like questioning the federal government and distrust. One of my cases, I think I only prevailed because of the federal person, the federal attorney who was on the other end. And also it's a lesson too in how we walk through the world, because when we filed our petition and the government filed their opposition, it was an attorney I had trained who left to join the DOJ, and he was opposing us. And we had some venue issues over whether the case should be in Minnesota or in Texas. And I reached out to him and said, I know my name is not on the pleadings because I don't have malpractice insurance, because I'm an in-house attorney and Dorsey, my former law firm, signed it. But he actually agreed, once we got the person back here, he agreed to dismiss without prejudice so that we could immediately refile and eliminate the fight over venue, because for those who don't know, Minnesota courts have been really going out of their way and out on a limb to exercise venue over cases for Minnesota residents who've been sent out of state. Typically you have to file where the person's detained, but they've been exercising venue here most. And so, like, I mean, it was, talk about like coming full circle and him doing this solid. And I think because of relationships and because of how I walk through the world, you know, gets to impact how other people experience the world. And one of the things that he said with me that's really stayed with me is, you know, Joe, like, I don't get to do justice right now. I have to find these tiny little ways that I can try to do what's right. And so, you know, there is good too. There's good on all sides, and I think so many people are trying to do like the tiny little thing that they can do. So I realize I've just been talking for a very long time, but thank you. You really touched my heart. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Joe. Go ahead.
I don't know how this fits in exactly to the talk, but it seems adjacent and worth mentioning. In my family, we have 4 kids, and it is crazy all the time, and we have many pets and so on. And we have said in recent years that our motto, our family motto, is embrace the chaos. And then you can't lose, because it's chaos, you love it, and it's all good.
Sounds pretty good. Sounds pretty good. Is there anyone online who'd like to say something?
Hi, Ben. This is Heidi. I had a question forming as you were speaking. I think you said something to the effect of all the characteristics you think something has are imputed by your mind, and there's not really an absolute, if I got that correct.
Mm-hmm.
But we live in this world, and we sometimes make judgments about things that are right or wrong in terms of injustices and how to ameliorate suffering. But there may be someone else that sees a different path as to how to ameliorate suffering. So how do you hold both of these things together?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Good question. I think the emphasis is on making the best judgment you can. And then, in the Dhammapada it says, do not give your attention to what others do or fail to do, give it to what you do or fail to do. So there's a lot of do not give your attention to what others do or fail to do, give it to what you do or fail to do. And it's a pervasive tendency in Buddhism to really put a lot of emphasis on like, what am I doing? How is it conducive to liberation or non-liberation? And the thing is then, no one I know is ever going to only do that. We'll still be looking outward. And in fact, the invitation of Shi is to look outward and think this is a situation of things and affairs. So the judgments that we make will be based on relationship. But, I just, it's kind of a matter of emphasis. It's very helpful to bring a lot of attention to just like, what am I doing here? Because given the media environment we have, you could spend your whole life thinking about what other people are doing. And that's probably not the most beneficial action, in my opinion. And yeah, I do like to understand that no matter how far I disagree with someone or how profoundly the harm I believe they have committed, that ultimately we're part of the universe together and our liberation is bound together. And so I'm going to try and act in that way. That doesn't mean that I don't take many actions to try and stop people from doing harm. So, thank you for that question. Yes.
Hi, Ben. Thank you for your talk. And I'm very moved about what Joe said too, and this fight that's going on, and to try to bring justice to what's happening and to alleviate suffering for those that are suffering the most through this system. But my question kind of goes to historically where Zen has made these overt gestures to alleviate suffering on a large scale. I just finished Crooked Cucumber, and I noticed that during World War II, if I read it correctly, that most of the Zen priests and the community stepped back and didn't take any action to alleviate suffering. In fact, they were almost involved with the government rather than separately. And I'm wondering if, because of people like Thich Nhat Hanh, who have engaged Buddhism, and then Shunryu Suzuki coming here and being involved with the people that were protesting the Vietnam War, if this is something that was not done for a long time and is now becoming more pervasive in Zen and Mahayana Buddhism?
Yeah, it's a kind of a big question. It's like the scope is just so large. From the earliest layer of teaching, we see the Buddha interacting with people and interfering with harmful systems in various ways. It's a big topic. At the same time, we've seen Buddhist institutions be complicit in many, many harmful systems for the entirety of its existence, including wars, certainly and pervasively in terms of patriarchy. So there's no very clear answer, but generally speaking, what I like to do is look for the places where there is inspiration within the Buddhist tradition, since what I'm doing is my empowerment comes through trying to transmit that, to look for inspiration there and be like, well, these are the examples where there is some genuinely liberative social action being taken, and try and understand those and help people understand them. But it's been a very mixed bag. And so, too big of a question for a very complicated. Plus,
Sorry.
my ignorance is vast and boundless. So, anyway, I think that's good. I think ending on my ignorance is vast and boundless. Perfect way to end this gathering, dwelling in the realm of mystery, of unknowability, of a connection that's so complete because there aren't even distinct things to be connected. So we're here, and that's true too. And I'll turn it over to the Doan. Thank you.